Hello, everyone. How are you doing? This is Chris Moyer, the Vice President of Data Analytics and Data Enablement here at Blue Mantis. And we are on a webinar today to talk about how you are stuck in an AI pilot mode and how to get out and move that to production. So appreciate everyone joining us today. On the panel in the group, you are going to have Phil Gergen. Phil is the Chief Information Officer at Kuzi Group. You have George Barrett, Director of Business Analytics at Blue Mantis, Trey Bain, Senior Solution Architect at Blue Mantis, and of course myself. So appreciate everyone tuning in today. So a little bit about who Blue Mantis is, whether or not you are a current customer, we're in discussions to work with you as a partner, or you've been a longstanding individual who's aware of this company. Blue Mantis certainly has some roots, right? We're a next generation security first IT services provider that is built on technology infrastructure around procurement, professional services, managed services, cloud service provider offerings, and a very much AI driven organization for both our internal and our external needs for our customers. Currently, we have about 2,500 customers that rely on Blue Mantis for 24/7 support to keep their businesses running at peak performance. With some stats for you as well, we have about 400 unique users and customers in managed services. We also provide cloud services for about 250 customers. And the really good thing about that is our retention rate is 98% for managed services and 99% for CSP. So we have longstanding customers that we continue to support through our multitude of practices. And again, we're here to talk about AI, right? So appreciate everyone joining in. Another good part about us is we were founded in 1992. Our Net Promoter Score, very positive, as you can see there. And we have trusted advisors for about customers in finance, healthcare, manufacturing, retail, SLED, other verticals, very high in the energy and utility space. And we work with a lot of professional sports teams as well. A really good part about Blue Mantis's offerings that's very unique is we provide not only onshore support, but also nearshore as well as offshore for any of your business needs, whether you're, small business, mid-market, or enterprise level, we can support the needs that you have. So let's get started. So Phil, what would you say are the most common reasons AI pilots fail to scout in mid-market organizations, and what could business leaders do to watch out early in this process?
Thanks for the question, Chris. To get started, I'll introduce myself. So, Phil Gergen, the CIO of Kuzi Group. We are a promotional products manufacturer. So we are a mid-market manufacturing company. We've got locations across the US. We have partners in Asia, in South Asia, and the Philippines. So we have a lot of different places and people that we work with. We've been working on our AI journey for a couple of years, pretty solidly. We've been taking different actions and different things. Um, I do get excited when Chris called me up. He said, "Let's talk about AI." And then he said, "Hey, we're gonna talk about things that are stuck." So he thought of me first, which I thought was a pretty interesting comment. But I do call him when I get stuck because I do think Blue Mantis has been a great partner in working with a lot of areas. So we work a lot in two channels in AI pilots. We work one in enterprise style support and one in um, individual experience and making them more effective in their role. So as you work with AI pilots, you really need to define what they are. If you don't get to an AI pilot to understand what it means, then you have zero idea of success. Everyone gets excited and they say, try it and what's going on. And there's lots of good things, but you really need to tie it to the business outcome that makes it valuable to you. And that's the first place to get started for sure in AI pilots.
Appreciate that, Phil. Um, Mr. Bain, Trey, what thoughts or feedback do you have?
Yeah, so I love how actually I'm a solution architect here at Blue Mantis. I've been in the data and analytics space for 20 plus years. Uh, Phil, I love that the first thing you did is drive towards the end user in this. I think that's something that is often missed whenever people begin their journey. trying to understand what they're trying to accomplish at the end of their journey or even halfway through their journey will ensure that a POC that's built is thinking about how does it need to build itself around future use cases. Often, I think they're treated instead as one-off tooling instead of understanding that they are a platform that is going to support the business long-term. George, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so nice to see everybody. My name is George Barrett. I'm the Director of Business Analytics with Blue Mantis. I've worked with a lot of pilots in my time, whether it be BI, data related, data integration, AI. One of the things that we see very often is that everyone treats the pilot like it's an experiment, as opposed to something that is the stepping stone to an actual production use case. So we roll the pilot out. It looks like it works. The model is performing well, but governance, security, compliance are afterthoughts. They weren't baked into the original rollout. And that's really critical because essentially what we're trying to do is see how this is going to scale. And without those things in place, we're not going to be able to see how it would work in real time, and those become the blockers. So this is where we'd go in and put something like a roadmap because we want to track things like lineage, access controls, privacy considerations, model monitoring, because we want people to feel comfortable that they're going to move this to production and that one, it's going to work, that everyone's going to have the correct access. We like to call it the right people, the right data at the right place at the right time. But also that as we grow this use case, that it's going to be able to scale, not just from an architecture standpoint, but from a adoption standpoint.
And that's a great point on experimentation versus proof of concept. I think a lot of people say experimentation fails. Oh, it must have been a proof of concept because I experimented with the new tool. It's unknown. There's a lot of unknown things it can do. Usually when you come into a new technology and tooling, there's a framework for you to work in. So the experimentation is relatively small and you run into a proof of concept. I think with AI, because it's so wide open, everybody is experimenting quite effectively, finding really unique use cases for it, and then running into either calling that the proof of concept or running it into a proof of concept really fast without thinking about all the different things that George was mentioning of making sure you know what's going to happen. How do you get there? Is it really just a tool that makes a person more effective, or is it a structural pilot that is going to help the enterprise? So defining that early on and not being worried when experimentation fails that you're failing at AI. We experiment all the time. We're constantly pushing the team. How can you use it? Why did you use it? Push really hard on experimentation, but experimentation definitely. I mean, I don't know what everybody's expectation of experimentation is, but you get a low success rate on experimentation. Proof of concept is still much lower than implementation, but experimentation is definitely a different thought process for an individual or a small group before you roll into a pilot. And that does, bringing in a team to help understand, now I have this thing that I can do. It's maybe like bringing in a software. That experimentation piece tells you what you can do, what you can't do, what you think it can do for you. And then say, okay, now I'm going to do a structured proof of concept. What is the business outcome? What is important to get done? Do I have the framework to make it happen? And that's really a true proof of concept that you can be successful at and understand and then support, to the organization.
Great points, Phil. And you mentioned business outcomes, and that's something that we approach, all of our projects with our customers here at Blue Mantis, right? We're working often in the specific technology aspect of things, but also heavily in the non-technical needs, and why we're all here, right? What are we trying to solve? So aligning AI initiatives with business value, good role in there. How can organizations ensure that their AI initiatives are aligned with real business value from the start? And what roles does that alignment play in scaling successfully? Phil, I'll let you take that.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, bringing the right business users in, whether it is if you have experimentation that you've given tools to business users who are in the day-to-day, and then rolling that up to their executives and letting them understand where it fits in their organization and their departments, and rolling it up there is really important. Understanding there's a lot of people who don't understand what it can do for us yet, which I think is, really important to as we walk through and understand. But getting the executives on and saying, okay, it is IT thought it was important. We have some really strong business users who came up with a really good experiment, but are not used to putting it into a proof of concept or understanding the project structure that's important to organizations. It's still a project that the business needs to think about. When we talk about business value, business understanding, going to your CFO, he still understands business outcomes. This is no different. Just because we have a new tool that is AI and it's exciting, there's a lot of things, making decisions on business outcomes and bringing the business along is still the same. There's no magic shortcut just because it is AI.
Yep.
So I I can't tell you how many times I'm on a call with a customer and I ask them, what is your use case? And they say word for word, I don't know. I just know that my CEO has come to me and said, Claude is awesome. I want Claude. And then you try to push a little bit. What is that actually going to get you, right? And they go, I don't know. I can ask it questions and it can answer it. And I think the reality of the version of AI that we're in right now is people think about AI as I ask it a question and therefore it gives me the answer. But what question they're going to ask is just really hard to get to. I had this conversation earlier today with a member of my family, just trying to come up with use cases for using something like ChatGPT or Claude. It's harder than people imagine. The way we've gotten around that with Blue Mantis, and George alluded to this a little bit earlier, is our engagements often start with talking to the business. We set it up almost interview style, understanding not what are they trying to do that AI can solve, but what are they doing right now that's hard? What is complicated? And what we find is sometimes AI is the solution, sometimes it's a process change. But once we understand what the pain point is, then we can start aligning technologies and solutions around it. With AI, those solutions we've found many more things that we can tackle with AI that were just much harder to do beforehand. But still, starting with the business, understanding what their pain points are, and then building solutions around that is far better than giving them a Copilot license and seeing what happens.
Yeah, and just to echo, what everyone's really saying, I think that, as someone who lives and breathes in the technology side, a lot of people just get caught up with what can this technology do? And what features and functionality does it have? What does its competitor have? And they don't really focus on how the business is going to actually use it. And we partner with the business really from the very beginning because we want to understand, like, okay, this tool is going to generate some kind of output. So what decision does this improve? Or what workflow changes because this exists? And really that kind of is going to come down to the change management, especially when it comes to how people are going to work are they prepared to work differently? Because when we go to leadership, they want to see not just, okay, we've bought this tool and people are working differently, but how does this affect the business outcomes? Are we going to have better operational efficiency? Are we going to improve the customer experience? Is our risk going to be reduced? Or are we going to grow in different ways? So we're doing that versus positioning, hey, we're going to be having AI for innovation for its own sake.
Points, guys. And we talk, we'll talk about the business value there. And when you get to that point, right, when that experiment or pilot becomes something fruitful and a company is ready to take it into other parts of their organization, right, scalability comes into play. And I'm big on data governance, and without data governance in some, secure fashion, in some process fashion, it's tough to scale this. So, Trey, I'll throw this one at you. What steps can organizations take during that pilot phase and post-pilot phase to ensure that their AI solution is ready to scale properly among the organization?
Yeah, Phil mentioned earlier that there's a difference between experimentation and a pilot, and I love that. I'm a little bit of a word nerd whenever it comes to understanding where words come from. And if we think about those two words, when we talk about experiment or piloting, there's always an outcome in mind. A pilot never takes off in a plane and doesn't know where they're going to land. They always have a destination, and they understand what should happen in order to prove success. If the wings stay on the plane, that is success, right? If they don't, there's a problem and you should reassess what you're doing. That's going to be true of any sort of implementation that we do around AI. You know, it's the POC that you're building. It is not the end solution. It's going to be a Lego block. It's something that you're going to build on later. And if you don't know what the destination is that you're building towards, ensuring that you have the proper technology and the processes in place, that you've trained your people appropriately to be able to do that, is impossible.
Yeah, I like the reference there of Legos and putting things together, and how does that fit into the current area? If you just have a building block that doesn't have the surrounding pieces, what does it connect to? How does it play with its partners? You're never going to scale anything. There's no place. You can't just throw a Lego block into the middle of, you know, whatever you're building and hope it magically attaches. So attaching the good structure, that base structure of data, you know, everything runs back to data. Whether your project is cleaning data, which it can be, whether your project is utilizing that data. But unless you have good streams coming up and down throughout your entire flow, and does it fit into your data structure and your organization, you'll never be able to scale anything other than, you know, that Lego can work really well, but it can't play with its partners.
Yeah, from my experience, I've worked with a lot of BI pilots, and AI is definitely a different animal because typically with BI, you bring in just the business users who are going to potentially use it, and maybe someone who's got the knowledge on how a dashboard's going to be built. With AI pilots, you need to bring in the security teams, the compliance teams, the IT operations. They're typically brought in at the end of a lot of projects because it's like, how are we going to configure this once we buy it? They don't want to get involved. Well, it's actually critical here because we need to validate the assumptions around infrastructure, access controls, monitoring, because we want to do it while it's still flexible, as opposed to get pigeonholed into something and then we find out later down the road that we made a mistake. And this is where we would come in and do a scale readiness checklist, as well as a pilot success criteria, because we want to make sure that not only is the pilot successful technically, but that it doesn't fail operationally, and we make that ease of transition when it comes to scaling time.
George, you bringing that up, I love that you kind of veered towards security, because I think it is something that skips. And that's because whenever you're initially starting the POC, often it is the interface that people are used to dealing with. They're going to Copilot and they're typing in a question. They're going to Claude and typing in a question. And eventually you hit this wall where you want to bring in additional information, additional data from somewhere. And I hear this often in terms of Copilot and how do we integrate, SharePoint data. And if you ask anyone, what's the quality of your data sitting on SharePoint? How do you know who should have access to what? It is a disaster. It's a mess. If you're listening to this webinar and you're thinking, oh no, I can't do that, you're not alone. Like it happens everywhere. Ensuring that you have the governance and security people involved to understand what data they can have access to early on is going to make it far easier to understand, what do you need to be able to store that information? What kind of systems do you need in place to integrate that knowledge base, that additional data into your AI solution, so that the right people can have access to that data at the right time?
Yeah, using AI as, an advanced search tool, it's a fantastic advanced search tool into your SharePoint, into whatever data set that you have. But usually there's not a business case other than, there's some personal efficiency that comes with that. That's not a pilot saying, okay, I'm gonna let people search in a better way. That's helpful. It's important. I don't want to downplay that at all, but that's not how this process works. If you are trying to do something structurally different, you need to think about your data feeds and think about your flow for any given project that you're going to roll out to an enterprise, to a customer. And access is the most important piece as we talk about AI pilots, because it can find things that could never be found before. You can't do security by hiding things. You can't put it in folders and name it funny, or different things that people do in SharePoint. There's so many things people are like, oh, I'll just hide it over here. And that doesn't work because it has access to everything. It can see all, and you start running a few things. And then if you're running a structural proof of concept, just connecting it to your data systems without the structure and the APIs and knowing what your data flow is, well, you'll never be confident that it's going to do what you want it to do.
Points, guys. And yeah, Trey, you mentioned the security piece, and obviously a lot of the AI projects that we have going on right now, majority of them are including the Mantis Protect, portion into that to ensure that everything is properly secured and restricted. So we've gotten through some success, right? We'll talk about one of my favorite books, actually, Jim Collins' Good to Great, right? When you get started, you're hoping that you have a good pilot, right? What should organizations be measuring during and after their AI pilot to determine whether or not it's successful and ready to scale for the business? What type of KPIs, what types of metrics? What are you guys seeing? George, let's start with you on that one.
Yeah, I mean,
You're obviously boots on the ground, so.
yeah, a lot of it, I mean, very similar to my last answer is you're going to want to make sure that it's ready for scalability. And it's not just technical scalability, but I know that everybody cares about performance metrics. How accurate is it? How fast is it? How efficient does it make people work? And that's even hard to quantify in certain regards. But I mean, when it comes to scalability, I also use the word confidence. Like, are we confident that the infrastructure that we have in place is going to scale for future use cases, future user groups, and whatnot? Are the ownership models clearly defined? Like, do we have data stewards? Do we have application stewards that we're able to go in and say, okay, if I have a question or this isn't operating the same way that I thought it would, who's going to be able to help me with that question, as opposed to me asking the AI that just gave me a vague or hazy question, how it actually works itself. And are we able to audit it and explain the model? But I think that one key component here, it doesn't even really involve the AI itself. It's the data. Is the data trustworthy and traceable? And do we have the appropriate data governance, data literacy in the organization, the data lineage? I think that's going to be an important piece that people are going to look to make sure that this whole end-to-end solution is going to work for the organization.
I really like that point about auditing. As we work through some of our projects for analytics, we re-audit, run through multiple models, compare analysis to each other. As AI is a predictive solution, it doesn't have the consistency that traditional compute has. Traditional compute has ones and zeros, you know what's going to come out. You put in these certain number of ones, certain number of zeros, you're going to get the same answer over and over. This is brand new, where it is predicting consistently among the same data. It becomes, we talk about experimentation, proof of concept. It's science that we're figuring out. It's gravity that has a role of it's going there. We don't know all the rules yet. We know that when we drop a ball, it falls to the ground, but we really don't know why yet. We're at that point in AI. We just know it happens pretty regularly and pretty consistently. Hallucination definitely is getting a lot better as well. I think that's less and less of a focus as long as you have a good data structure, but you still need to compare results, understand that auditing, and consistently make sure that it is delivering the results that you want it to. Otherwise, over time, the newest model can come out. You think it's exciting. It gives a better answer in some use cases, but if you're not coming back and auditing it to your current flow, then you're not sure what that consistency will be.
Yeah, so you circled around the whole accuracy question, and I think if you'd asked me maybe 2 months ago how you measure success of an AI solution, I would have probably in some way got to the word accuracy, and that just doesn't seem to be that problem seems to be getting smaller and smaller. The models are doubling in capabilities every 4 months. They're getting better and better. Hallucinations they're still a thing, but they're not as big of a thing as they used to be, and they're going to get smaller and smaller. The idea that you have to craft the perfect prompt in order to get the response that you want. A good prompt is helpful, but a good prompt is no longer make or break whether or not you get accurate information back. I think the bigger question is, from the information that it's working from, can it actually give you a correct answer? And are you asking it questions that it's built to handle? More and more people are asking if they can replace their analytical tool with a search around AI. And my typical answer is probably not yet, not because the models aren't good. It's because that's not what they're intended to do. They're not intended to give zeros and ones. They're intended to answer contextual information about things. Now, that's changing, and I think you give it another couple months, and we can rehab that conversation. But I do think things that you should be measuring is how much is it taking to be able to get the answers that you want to be able to get to. Because the fact is different models are good at different things, and having a system that's capable of tagging in the right model to answer the right question, I think is really, really important. I also think there should be some evaluation around what does it cost to get that answer versus having somebody manually do it. I don't think that's something that we're very good at right now, but being able to look at, I can deploy an AI solution to operationalize something, or I can have an intern do it. We don't have our arms very good around how do we quantify that effort. So when you're entering into a scalable solution, having a system that captures what is it costing you? What model should you use? Do you have the right data and infrastructure in place to be able to support it? How often are you reassessing those decisions that you've made? Once we have those nailed down, we can really understand what is it going to cost to be able to scale an enterprise AI solution.
Yeah, that's a great point. When we're doing large scale analytics, where we're asking AI to go back through previous data sets to find information that was previously, unable to get through analytics, we do a lot of images. We do a lot of things that are context that are not as solid in our industry. So we check the model cost every single time we run proof of concept. We go in, we experiment, we say, can this do this? Okay, now I'm going to experiment across models, and I'm going to hope that the team is looking for the cheapest model that is capable of doing that. And then we run cost analytics on there at small scale, and then at large scale. For the first few months of live, we're watching very close what the cost is, and we're segmenting that out to make sure that we can confirm that that is more valuable, because AI is doing what humans can do. There's things that it could do for research and different things, but now it can do it better, faster, cheaper. But you do have to make sure that the use case that you're looking at is better, faster, cheaper, not more expensive with the same outcome anyway.
Yeah, Phil, great points. And a lot of the conversation, guys, right? When you talk about any project, cost is something that is always coming up, right? But with an AI project, you have multiple folks that you need to answer to, right? Finance may want cost savings, cost reduction. Operations may want something completely different, right? They want increased productivity, increased output. So a project of this scale obviously touches a lot of different lines. And then Phil, you at the end of the day, as the CIO, needs to ensure everything from a tech and a data perspective is in order, right? So a lot of folks to measure success in their own way, right? And that's usually a conversation. So, little question on that. So if a pilot saves time, right, but users may not trust the output or the workaround on it, would you say that counts as success? Or do you think there's more, right? It's like a cultural thing, or people buying in?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. From that specific area, utilization and bringing users up to speed in your flow is definitely an important piece. You can get excited and say it can do it better or faster. We do have use cases where we're not doing things cheaper. We're doing things faster and more scalable. Our order volume can range 50% from one day to the next. We're a high volume, fast turn time, and having the ability to have consistent workflow that is scalable can be a lot more beneficial to us than the cost savings of something that's going out there. So there's scenarios that we're using it where we're even paying slightly more in the current state. We hope it's going to be cheaper in the future. We're not sure, but there is a value right now to making it faster through our system, driving there. And then also at the user adoption side, bringing the right people in there in the flow that understand how their new job fits into the flow is very important. Just like any new technology change, an ERP change, we talk about change management and ERP. Everybody just understands that intrinsically. With an AI initiative, you might be making your same people more effective, but if you are changing your overall flow and you're changing people's roles, changing what their goal is day to day, there's a lot of change management that goes into that. And the excitement of AI can definitely outrun that and outpace that on you if you're not careful early on into who you're going to adopt. Sometimes I find myself in meetings saying things, especially at the beginning, you get excited and you're like, oh, we're going to be able to do everything that you do. And you just can't say that to somebody, to their face, because they will take that and they can either make it fail, help it fail, or it can be so scary that you could never find that actual solution. Not that you intended that they as a person in the company is going to be replaced, is that you can let them be the most effective they are. But as IT people and as executives who get excited about, replacing, not value add work or bringing different values in there, you definitely have to be careful in your talking points as you're building these things up.
Well,
Phil, you
in this
mentioned
webinar,
change.
we've sorry, Chris, I wanted to respond. I love this
Yeah,
this
get in
question.
there.
Because we had talked at the very beginning about talking to the business user and understanding what those problems were that were slowing them down in work, that keeping them from getting to the more important stuff. If we've actually spent some time talking to those end users and understood what's the problem is, and then we've calculated the success of a POC or any AI engagement has to do with making that problem go away or reduce that problem. I think that we're going to find that more often than not, those employees that we solve that problem for are going to be more productive because of the solution that we proposed and not replaced and not doing as much. Now, I think as an enterprise, we have to spend a little bit more time measuring that, right? And understanding what kind of value are we getting out of it. But this concern that seems to be circulating around that if AI comes in and does something someone's doing, it's going to take away work from them. I think more often than not, we're going to see their ability to produce go up and more value come out of those people.
Yeah, I think you see those metrics specifically in developers these days. AI, as it's been built by IT companies, the current focus right now, especially in the last, 3 to 5 months, has been being a better developer. But you don't see developers, the jobs. If you look at the charts, more developers are being hired every day. There's always more problems than there are solutions in any given business. There's more good ideas and things that you want to do than you can tackle. And once you understand that concept and help your organization through that, they can be more confident that they will get to tackle the next problem. And it's not going to be, okay, we're done now. We solved what you do today. That's not how most organizations work. That's not what they're excited about. There's always going to be times and cases and scary use cases that happen within organizations where they're going to be like, okay, I needed this, I used this, and they're going to either blame AI or get excited to say AI replace jobs, but that doesn't happen more times than not.
Yeah, no, good points, guys. And Phil, you had used the phrase change management earlier, and if there is, a technology swing that has went on right in recent years, ensuring that change management is part of your plan during a pilot or during, a full go to production internally, that needs to be taken serious. And a lot of the discussion that we're having with customers, we bring in our advisory group to make sure that change management is front and foremost for these deployments. So, all right, so we've been successful, right? Getting buy-in is super important. So we have our pilot wins, and we want to maintain organizational momentum, right? We want folks excited. So when we show that promise, and Phil, maybe from your experience, how have you worked internally with your group to keep momentum and to keep buying and to keep people excited about their AI deployments?
I think it's a little bit of a couple of things that we talked about already, but driving, the use cases, understand. Well, if you can get those few early adopters that are building this to step into the next project or solution early on and show the value of people who adopt AI in your organization, I think that's really important. It's a new skill. It's a new exciting skill for a lot of different people. If you can take those people and drive them and put them on a pedestal, for lack of a better, talk about them in your company meetings, talk about them, how they've been so successful at what they do and they can do more and better things. That's really important to continue the adoption. If you build a project that the first one is scary and you don't do all this extra work, I've been in ERP projects where we brought in a psychologist to talk about change management sometimes because it is important and it does when it changes the whole organization's jobs. I think that's not a bad idea sometimes, depending on the level of what you're doing. But taking those concepts of making people important, driving the value, showing showing your whole organization that this is a new way to work, those are extra steps that maybe we've forgotten about sometimes at this level of project or the proof of concept or different things. But if you can drive that and drive excitement in your organization, not fear, that's just something you constantly have to watch as you're going through anything.
Yeah, and I think that another thing to keep in mind is that it's how we're framing the pilot, and it's an outcome frame. So it's not like this is what it did, it's this is what it means for our strategic priorities as an organization. It's going to be how is it going to help with efficiency amongst our developers, our staff members? What's the customer experience benefit going to be? How are our customers going to see better outcomes because we are using some better technology? How is it going to help us in terms of our risk posture and risk management? Or how are we able to innovate both internally and externally for our customers? And it shows that how these pilots, they support the broader goals of the organization versus just, hey, we're going to use one tool to solve one problem. No, this is going to open up a whole another world of solutions. One thing I wanted to also mention here is timing. I hate when we get into pilots or when we start projects and the timing isn't right in terms of budget, because a lot of times people say, yeah, this is great, but we just don't have the money for it right now. We would love to keep that momentum going right from the pilot into a deployment. And I mean, this is where we would help as well with kind of building out those ROI calculators, those timelines and roadmaps so you can see, hey, this is what you're going to get and benefit from over the course of the next month, year, decade, whatever it may be in terms of the technology. So I would love for those timelines to line up properly when we do go into a pilot.
Anything on that, or are you good?
I think George hit the nail on the head with that. The budgets are complicated when you're rolling from a POC into something going forward. But if you've done the work up front where you understand what value you're getting out of the POC, what that value rolls into whenever you begin to operationalize, justifying the investment is significantly easier when you understand what ROI you've gotten from what you've done.
And got a question from the group, guys. So I'll start with Phil, and then any feedback, Trey or George, on your deployments that you could give. But this is a good one. What is one thing you wish you would have done differently during an AI pilot that would have helped you move a little quicker?
I think a lot of things. It's tough to just nail down one. We talked about a lot of the things that I've learned over the last, couple of years doing things. But I think the framework and the structure and reaching out to someone when you're just unsure. Everybody feels behind. I feel behind. If you don't feel like you're behind, that's probably not a good place to be, no matter where you're at. If you are behind, if you're not, this is all brand new and there's so many exciting things. So don't worry about feeling behind. Don't worry about listening to this or the next one or scrolling through LinkedIn and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so far behind. I'll never get there. There's no way to go. just getting going and making sure that your team is inquisitive, they have capabilities, and they understand that. And then taking that forward when people do have exciting ideas and building the structure around them to the proof of concept, to driving to the business needs. That to me is the thing that is the most important. Just making sure that you're going forward and you're getting excited and you're bringing that culture into your team and bringing the culture and the space for them to be able to identify from your IT team, from your business users. I think opening that up and not making it feel like it's a project coming to them, which is a little bit traditional projects. They're working and all of a sudden a project is coming to them. Now there's use cases that we are all finding out every single day, and opening up that space and then building the structure around that, I think would be really impactful for everybody to think about.
I wrote down a word that you said there, Phil, inquisitive, because I do think that that's something where every user that goes into an AI pilot is going to need to embrace. So often people say, I'm going into this pilot for this one use case, this one data set, whatever it may be, and they just tune out everything else because they're so focused on the task at hand. I think that there's a lot of opportunity and possibilities with these types of projects. So going in there with a mind that's ready to explore and discover new opportunities is really going to help kind of build out those new use cases and potentially justify scalability for the deployment years down the road.
I had 3 conversations last week with customers where they said word for word that they waited too long to adopt AI. I don't think it can be understated that your employees right now, they are absolutely using AI. They're going to ChatGPT, they're going out to Gemini, they're going out to Claude. They're asking questions. If you have not given them a solution, they are uploading information from your business into those tools. They're using it at home and they bring it to work and they can access it. If you haven't actually started some sort of AI initiative right now in order to capture what those employees are already trying to do on their own, you definitely are behind and need to take some initiative on how to solve some of those particular problems. So you asked earlier, like what do I hear customers saying they wish they had done? They say they wish they had started earlier.
Great point, guys. And I'll kind of chime in with my feedback because often very close to the customer. And the thing I hear most is, focus on data governance, on data integrity. Obviously, whether it's a BI project, an AI project, your data needs to be as clean as possible. We know that's pretty impossible to have, 100% clean data and high integrity, but data governance is something that, a lot of them would have focused a little more time on. And that would have helped their project run a little smoother. So let me pivot gears here real quick. I'm going to reshare my screen again. All right. So first and foremost, gentlemen, really appreciate you guys hopping on the call and sharing your insights and your wisdom and your experience. Obviously, here at Blue Mantis, we have a full life cycle of any data governance, analytics, AI services and needs. And our focus on this, guys, is just assess, modernize, and manage, right? So we have a plethora of offerings here that we can certainly support. So from a call to action perspective, if you want our help on doing an assessment, working on stakeholder interviews, things of that nature, we can help you with all that. And at the end of the day, there will be a takeaway, right? You will get an inventory workbook, architectural diagrams, AI roadmap. And if you guys need to connect with us, here is our contact information. We look forward to hearing from you. And I think like Phil said, you are not alone. Everybody is struggling and looking for support on this. So we are here to help you. So thank you very much. Everyone have a great day.